welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor-Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Irene Moore Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker.
And me, Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair. This recording takes place at Gertrude's Writing Room. We're very grateful to Vanessa Shields, writer and proprietor, for hosting us today. And we are welcoming Dr. Karl Jirgens, who was born and raised in Toronto and attended the University of Toronto for his BA, Ontario College of Art for his BFA, and York University for his MA and PhD. He's a specialist in literary theory, contemporary literature with a focus on Canadian literature, and creative writing and publishing. He currently lectures at the University of Windsor, and he is the author of several works on literary and art criticism, digital culture and performance, and has published in several journals and periodicals. His fictional works have been anthologized by Coach House Press, Black Moss Press, Mercury Press and Texteditions. His theatre performance works have been presented nationally and internationally, including at the Ultimatum Fest in Montreal and at the Inter Festival in Quebec City. Karl Jirgens founded and edited Rampike, the international literary journal of contemporary art, writing, and theory, from 1979 to 2016. The entire 36-year print run is now available through the U of Windsor's Scholars Portal, which is care of the Leddy Library at the University of Windsor. So welcome to Karl.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is wonderful. Small correction. I did attend the Ontario College of Art. I went there for 3 years. I should have got advanced standing, but I'm an art school dropout.
Oh,
so I never got my BFA there, but I'm actually quite proud of the fact that I dropped out.
Okay, so you should be in a rock band as well then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I used to sing with a punk band for a while.
Well, that
so
is
it
absolutely...
It fits the profile.
Fantastic.
Gives
Okay.
you street cred.
Thank you for that update.
And I was a roadie, too. I used to help Concert Productions International in Toronto, and I would build stages for groups like, let me think, Bob Marley and the Wailers, Pink Floyd,
Wow.
big bands, and among others, Stones and so on, and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. They're all ancient now, fossils, but I used to do that kind of work, so that was just on the side.
Wow.
But anyway.
Yeah, that's great.
Wow, has any of your roadie work ever made it into your fictional work?
Yeah, some, in fact, yeah. And I'm working on... I just sent off a collection of short stories to a publisher which will remain unnamed because I don't want to jinx it. But, I just finished a collection of stories, and I'm also working on a novel. This is, me neither. Everybody says that, yeah. Anyway...
So tell us a little bit about the founding of Rampike, which is your literary journal. How did that come about?
Well, interestingly enough, it started at the Ontario College of Art after I finished my BA at U of T, where I was studying with a lot of literary mentors of mine, including Dave Godfrey, who started House of Anansi, New Press, Press Porky Peak, and then he moved out to the West Coast where he started yet another press. The guy was like the Johnny Appleseed of Canadian presses. And I thought, well, I could maybe do a lit mag myself just for funsies. And I got some funding from the Ontario College of Art Student Council, and they helped with the first issue. And I was thinking of what A.J. Liebling said about freedom of the press belonging to those who own a press. And I also thought about what Norman Levine said, how all writers start in a little magazine. So I said, well, I should start a little magazine. And I was pretty tired of the pedestrian type of writing that was out at that time. And I said, well, I better do something a little different. But I want to work in art because I was in love with visual art at the time, being at Ontario College of Art. So I mixed in art and writing and literary theory. So it worked out pretty good. So that's where it started. I had to get a name, Rampike. So I was looking at a dictionary of Canadian terms. My choices were things like fire hydrant, concession road, and I went, those are very Canadian, and Rampike. And I went, Rampike's got a nice ring. I wonder what it means. And I looked it up, and it's the skeleton of a tree that remains after a forest fire. It's this black finger pointing accusingly at the sky, at the lightning that might have struck it. And then I discovered there's a type of tree called the lodgepole pine, which will not release its seedlings into the air until temperatures around it exceed the burning point. And so it's a self-defense mechanism to defend against lightning. And I went, ooh, that's perfect, because the lightning hits the tree, the seedlings float on the air. When the fire burns down, which is started by the lightning all over the forest, the seedlings land on the fertile ash, and a new generation of trees comes up. That's exactly what I was doing with the magazine. And I went, perfect, I'm going to call it Rampike. And so that's how it started. Wow. And it's been a pain in the arse ever since. I was thinking of changing the name to Rampike. You know?
So was the process of editing and publishing the journal a collaborative process with your authors, would you say?
Less so with the authors and more so with other editors. James Gray from Boston was jumped on board almost right away. Within 3 to 4 years, I was distributed on 5 continents, which was amazing. It just blew my mind how quickly they picked me up. And I went to places like Paris and London and Germany, to help market it there, and they were all receptive, and all over the United States and Canada and Japan and the Pacific Rim. And James Gray from Boston saw the mag, and he said, hey, this is fantastic. I've got a bunch of authors here in the New York-Boston network that maybe you might be interested in. And he started listing like really super famous people like Paul Auster and Russell Banks. And I'm going, holy smokes, yes, please. And he started steering them to me. And I went, fantastic. And we connected with people like Philippe Soler, who is one of the main Tel Quel group people in Paris. And I don't know if you know the Tel Quel group, but they included people like Jacques Derrida, the person who invented deconstruction. Let's see, Jacques Lacan, Julia Kristeva, one of the great grandmothers of psychotherapy, and so on. And I actually got interviews, and I published Jacques Derrida, Julia Kristeva, and Philippe Soler, who was married to Julia. So like this little circle started spreading, and so it was amazing what was happening. I got Russians, I got Yevgeny Yevtushenko, who's like superstar, and then I just kept working it, because once you get a few issues out with some big names, everybody wants to be in. Mm-hmm. And so thanks to James Gray, thanks to Jim Francis, who was a student along with me at York U. I was going for my PhD at the time, and he jumped in and said, "Yeah, you need a hand?" And I said, "Sure." And we did all the grunt work, like we drank a lot of coffee. I subsequently became allergic to coffee. I would drink like a quart a day. And we would go through all the submissions. I would have a pile of submissions every month that was like 2 feet tall. And everybody wanted to be in the mag. And we would read through them, really quickly. And so it was with the editors that helped. Later, so it's a great question. Later, I had guest editors. So Kateri Akawenzi-Dem helped edit the Indigenous issue. Alana Bondar, who passed away, God bless, did the, she was from Algoma University, Laurentian chain, did the eco-culture issue. Richard Martel from Quebec City did the 400th anniversary of Quebec City issue, which is all French and did not sell well in English Canada. But it was a big hit in Quebec. And so on. So yeah, so editors helped a lot, less so the writers. Sometimes I would write back to authors and I'd say, if you revise this a little bit, we'll take the piece, it's good. And so it really trained me as an editor, because I would say, this is really a good piece, but if you tweaked it a bit, it would be a fantastic piece. Can we tweak it a bit with your permission? And they would go, sure, anything. I just want to get published. And I go, okay.
So how did your artistic background influence this
Well, look
work
at the
on
covers
the
here. Let me show you a slide. There's a slide. I mean,
For our listeners, we had a little bit of a sound cue that we'll have photos on our social media.
Yeah, right.
We've
Click,
got,
there's
you'll be
another
also
slide.
able to see covers of Rampike on the website that we'll post as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so the cover art on this is a lot of my design. Because I study at and it has a lot of visual poetics in it. Like we have a lot of people who are doing locals like Gustave Morin and superstars of the international scene. responses to Philip Glass, who is a very famous musician in the United States. Gary Barwin, who just won some literary prizes, and international as well, like Jaap Blanc, who is like a superstar in Europe and North America. I actually brought him into Windsor one time. Yeah. And so this is a Jaap Blanc cover, by the way. And so we would look for covers and, art and on the inside and the outside. Covers were color, full color. The guts were black and white. We couldn't afford color on the inside. We just didn't have the money. The grant money had to come from the Canada Council for the Arts and or the Ontario Arts Council and or from my pocket and or from my parents who were getting ticked off. They're saying, when are you going to stop that ridiculous magazine and, get a real job? Anyway, yeah. So yeah.
How old were you when all this was going on?
I was just a kid. I was like late teens, early 20s. I was just starting and I'm going, hey, this would be a good thing to do. And, looking back, it was a stupid thing to do because I could have been writing, instead of publishing, and I was publishing other people. And, looking back, well, I'm grateful to all the authors. It was a really exciting trip. I got to meet all these wonderful other artists and writers. And so that was really fantastic. But I could have been working on several novels. I mean, this is a 36-year run. And it hasn't stopped. I've been doing it for 40 years because now we have the entire magazine collected online at the Leddy Library, as you mentioned. And, it's been work doing that too. So the last 3-4 years have been piled up with that. So I've been doing it for 40 years, like little did I know. Like you can get a lot done if you're a writer in 40 years.
This was your creative process. So this is obviously
I managed
what
to
you were
pump
meant
out
to
4
do.
books in the meantime, but, and a 5th one just now. But, I could have. It is part of the creative process. You're quite right, yeah.
Well, this is an excellent tool for procrastination, though, I have to say.
Yeah. I can't write my next book because I've got another issue to pump out, Yeah. Anyway.
So what was the most rewarding part of the Rampike era for you?
I think meeting other writers and artists, it was like fantastic. I got to meet these beautiful, beautiful people that were all dedicated to their arts. I traveled to Europe. I talked to Joseph Beuys, who is like a pal of Andy Warhol's. He says to me while I'm interviewing him, he says, "Do you know Andy Warhol?" And I go, "Yeah, who doesn't?" He says, "Well, next time you're in New York, drop by his studio and say hi from me." And I'm going, okay. I never went. But I did publish Laurie Anderson, who was a friend who was associated with Lou Reed, the Velvet Underground, who were palsy with Andy. And so, that worked out pretty good. Julia Kristeva was a lot of fun. I interviewed her at the Ritz-Carlton in Toronto, and she comes waltzing out of the elevator with a very large glass of red wine, and she comes up to me and she says, "I know in Canada you are not supposed to drink the wine in the elevator, but I am Julia Kristeva." I'm going, okay, let's get another drink, shall we? And she says, "Delightful." And then we proceeded. McLuhan, I met McLuhan. I was his student. Marshall McLuhan, maybe people have heard of him. And I was in the last class he taught before he died. It wasn't because of me. I was a pretty okay student, but I remember him saying to me, "Karl, you should study television. It's where it's at." And I'm going, maybe, okay. And then William Burroughs, I met Burroughs a few times, and he would walk in to an art gallery. I actually published one of his shotgun paintings as a cover. It was brilliant. He would take some plywood and then he would spray paint it with illustrations from his latest novels, and he would blast it with a shotgun, and that would be a shotgun painting, right? And he had a show on in the Cold City Art Gallery in Toronto, and he comes up to the gallery space, and he walks in. He goes, "I want a vodka and a cigarette. I'm an old man, and I want a Chesterfield, and I'm not talking about a place to sit down." Like that.
Have you ever considered a one-man show?
Yeah. I did. Sarah mentioned that I was a performance artist. I've done a lot of performance. I'm actually in Performance Canada. I've got about 30 performances listed in there, and I used to do shows, but performance art in Canada sort of waned around the turn of the century. And I still do it, but like I've done it for Bookfest Windsor, and people just don't get it. They go, "What are you doing?" I'm going, "It's performance art," and they go, "Huh?" and Norval Morrisseau, he was fantastic. He was a native woodland painter, and I said, "Oh, I got to check this guy out." He let me use some of his art for the cover, and so I did a cover piece of his. It was Man Turning into Thunderbird because he was trying to quit alcohol, and so like part of the process was a learning process for him to divest himself of negative influences, including booze. And he didn't want to get paid for his paintings in dollars or checks. He didn't trust white man paper. And he liked me, though, because I used to hang out with Selwyn Dewdney, and I used to hang out with Indigenous people. And I was later on, I went up to Cape Croker, which is and to Garden River Reserve, and so I knew a little bit about Indigenous ways. And he liked me right away because I understood where he was coming from. But he was really interesting because he would say, like, in a dream, I could go anywhere. He astral projected. He was a dream shaman. And he says he would go back to the ancient libraries, like in Carthage, before they were turned down on the astral plane and read the books there. And he would tell me what was in the books. And I would go, wow, this is great. I've got Norval Morrisseau telling me what was in the books in Carthage before it was turned in the library in Carthage. And I couldn't believe that. So, yeah, that was pretty exciting and, rewarding. So that's
and Rampike was an early adopter of making sure that LGBTQI and First Nations voices were heard, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We've been publishing people of that type for years. I remember seeking out Robert Mapplethorpe's work, for example. William Burroughs was another one. Norval Morrison, by the way. And then we did a whole issue on Indigenous culture, and I've always published Indigenous writers, including those from Windsor area, and Catariaca Wenzi Dam was the editor. She was great. But a whole bunch we've published, like Daphne Ojig, superstars of visual art, as well as Thomas King, Thompson Highway, speaking of that, he's both, right?
Right.
So I'm trying to think who overlaps. Thompson Highway, definitely, yeah. So, and I got to interview with Thompson Highway, and the cool thing about that is, since you ask, what the benefits of this are, I'm able to teach that stuff in my classes. So I will teach something about Thompson Highway in the classroom at the university, and at the same time I can rely on one of my own interviews, and I hand it out. I did that with Alistair MacLeod and Eugene McNamara and people like that too. So I'm able to mix my street cred, as you call it, with my classroom cred, and it works really nicely. So yeah.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about the process of digitizing the journal for Leddy Library.
Oh, that was painful.
How so?
Well, you see, I started the mag in '79, and so back then we had personal computers, but I had an Apple IIe with the big floppy drives, and you can't store pictures on any of those. Like, they're really slow. And I had all of my research on there. And so what we had to do is we had to type up the text by hand and then send a printout sheet, which looked just like typed paper, to a professional typographer who would then lay it out onto sheets. Then we had to put it on goldenrod paper at Coach House Printing. Coach House was my publisher. And they would do negatives. They would cut in the photos that I provided, and then it would be all laid out and then burned onto a plate, and then the plate would be run through a printing press. So that's how it started, okay, which is a really complicated way of doing. Then later, towards the turn of the century, everything was digitized. I was able to load images in color, text, you name it. I would do the layouts and everything myself. I got really handy at it. I didn't go in. I tried Quark Express, all of those other things. I found out that I could do everything using Microsoft Word. I didn't have to use any of the schmancy stuff if you knew the tricks. Mm-hmm. And so I would do that. I would do entire issues like that, really simple. I would train other people to do it. They learned how. We would cut in the photos, no problem. So after 2000, loading digitalized copies of the issues was simple. All I had to do was tweak them a little bit. But before that, tricky, because we had to scan. We had to scan everything during the 80s, the 90s, most of it. By the late 90s, you could do everything including the text but not the images. You couldn't cut in the images on a computer yet. I would send the images separately, and I would put them on a disc that I would send to the printer. Stan Bevington at Coach House was really good about it. He would give me ideas. When I first went to him, he says, well, there are two ways. I said, I want to do something different. He says, and I go, the medium is the message, because I'd been studying with McLuhan, right? and he says, well, there's two ways to fold an 11 by 17 folio. You can do it lengthwise or widthwise. Widthwise, it looks like Time magazine. Lengthwise, it'll look like Rampike. So the first few issues were 6 inches wide and 18 inches tall, which was really weird. But they sold out every single one. It would also fit on the back of your toilet seat because you could stack them up. If it was a perfect fit, everybody wanted them. Some people got angry because they wouldn't fit on their shelves, and they would put them in lengthwise. They sold out all over the United States. It didn't matter where I sent it to. All my distributors loved them because everybody wanted one. It was unique, and it had really cool stuff. It got great write-ups by people like Perloff, who is one of the main profs. She's at Stanford, and she really loved it. She did a big long write-up on it in Formations magazine. And so suddenly we were super famous, and like big poets like Charles Bernstein and everybody was hitting up on us saying, hey, you want to publish my stuff? I'm going, are you crazy? Sure. I wrote a letter to George Bowering saying, can you send me some stuff? He says, yeah, okay. B.P. Nicol was in town. He wanted to do stuff. Lola Lemire Tostovan wrote Gynocritics, which was a long poem about giving birth, and so like we had a nice mix going on. And so it was working out okay, but the digitalization was really difficult for the first issues, and then people at the University Library, I got to thank them. There was a bunch of them that were there. Heidi Jacobs, Dave Johnson, Marg McCaffrey-Piche, Christina Olson, Selma Aaron Conklin, all helped with the digitalization, and I want to thank them for the opportunity to put this archive online at the Leddy Library Scholars Portal. And if you want to look it up, it's really easy to find because I could tell you what the URL is, which is like complicated. It's HTTP blah blah blah. Who cares? So like I just go just Google about Rampike. It's easy to remember, about Rampike, and then a little pop-up comes up, and beside it says about Rampike University, and just click on University, and bing, you're in. And it's so simple, and I just went, okay, that's good. If you just put Rampike, you might get a definition of what a Rampike is, or you might get our backlist, which is handy to have, because if you're looking up a particular name, most of the names are on the backlist too. But anyway. So digitalization, quite a chore. But we got it done, and now it's out there. 4,000 pages, 36 years. It's all there for free, not for profit, as a public service. And all copyrights remain with the contributors. So I'm being open and honest. I don't want to make money out of this after the fact. There's an easy opt-out if somebody wants to opt out, but so far nobody wants to opt out because they all want to be part of the electronic Rampike archive because it's free advertising, They get a book out and they go, hey, I'm in there too, Okay.
So how does one celebrate the end of 36 years? Like, what is the plan for this celebration? Well,
yeah, I'm glad you asked because the Soka Gallery at the University of Windsor wants to maybe put on a little show, and then I'm thinking, well, we'll have slides of the archives. I'll show images. More slide images. Click, click, click.
These are awesome images.
Yeah. I have all the cover images, which are fantastic. And I've kept many of the original covers. So I said overprint the covers, and we'll keep some. And they're about 3 feet by 2 feet, and they're beautiful color, and they're printed on both sides. And I said, well, I'll do blow-ups of some of the internal pages, and then we can put those on the wall. And then maybe I'll invite some of the local authors and artists. I mean, we've had Lucy Howe, Zeke Moores, Ian Baxter, and all passed through the magazine at one point or another. And then a lot of local writers as well. Unfortunately, several of them have passed away in the meantime among the writers. So Alistair MacLeod, who was always game whenever we did a show. Eugene McNamara, God bless, also gone. But we have a lot of other writers who are still around, and so I will probably do like to be announced I talked to the SOCA people yesterday, and they said we couldn't get our committee together to yet decide which date, but we're pretty sure we're going to put you on and have a show. So I'll announce it. I'll put it on Facebook and whatever. So yeah, so a party there. And free food, booze, I'm hoping, and then I'm thinking of also doing one in Toronto, because the thing started in Toronto. It's been accepted by the Thomas Fisher Rare Books Library for the archive there.
Nice.
I was starting to dig, which is fantastic. Yeah. I'm happy, but now I got to go through my basement. And it started as an underground mag. It has finished as an underground mag. So I'm hauling all these boxes of correspondence from superstar artists and writers out of my basement, which I carefully stored. And I've got maybe 20 boxes that are big. You know those boxes that you get your paper in from Staples? Okay, they're all that big. They're jammed. I got to get them into Toronto somehow, but they're going to take them, I don't know. So yeah, so they're going to be there. So yeah, that's part. So I should do a show in Toronto as well.
Yes.
And then I can get all the local Toronto people that I've fed through the mag too.
What are you going to do with all the extra space in your basement is really the question.
Yeah, that too. I'll have more space.
Yeah. You're going to have a party down there?
Well, this is Windsor is dangerous for basements because of flooding, so it's probably a good thing that this is happening.
My basement's
now.
been pretty good, and I learned to put everything on racks. So that if it does get flooded, but mine never has, it's always 2 inches above the surface of the floor. So it's always been good that way. So I've been lucky that way.
That's good.
So what are your next projects other than cleaning the basement?
Well, I'm working, as I say, I just finished a book of short stories that I sent off to a publisher, and I have a novel on the go. I've got another book on money, because money is interesting to everybody. And so, those scams you get from the internet that say, I am the colonel of the Nigerian army, and, I have a cache of gold here. My shirt, by the way, is from Africa. You should know. It's cool, eh? I got this at the Secret Handshake Gallery in Kensington Market, just outside the gallery. I was invited to do a reading there with Bill Bissett and company, and it was a fun reading. But so I'll keep doing reading tours and promoting my own writing. So among other things, and working on books. So I'm working on this book on money, and then I've got several other. I got to get on the novel, which is basically a family history. It's called. Working title is Cold War Blues. It talks about my family history, the history of Latvia. I'm of a Latvian background. You wouldn't know looking at my name, Karl Jirgens. Sounds Germanic or maybe English. I don't know. But they suffered. Basically, Latvians say, we know about freedom because we have been liberated many times. And so they got swept over by the Germans, the Russians, the Swedes, the Poles, the Lithuanians, you name it. They got occupied many times. And so I'm going to write about that history, bring it up to the Cold War period. So the centerpiece of the novel is the Cuban Missile Crisis. And then more recently, what's happened to the world since then? Because I don't think the Cold War's ever ended.
No.
A lot of people think, well, it stopped back then. Officially, yes. Unofficially, no. So I'm going to keep writing about how we're putting up with life in the 21st century, and it's rough. So yeah, that novel, and I got lots to do.
That's great. Would you like to set up your reading for us?
Yeah, sure.
You're going to do a reading for us? Would you like to tell us a little bit about that? And then we'll...
Okay. Yeah, well, okay. This is a short story, very, very short, and it's based on the story of Jack and Jill. And Jack and Jill, the old nursery poem, I just thought I'd write a story about them as if they were still alive and happening in the real world. I sent this off to the New Yorker magazine, by the way, so I'm waiting to hear. I've had friendly rejections from them before, which are sort of encouraging. So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I'll try this one. So this is for their very short pieces section. But in this section Jack and Jill, Jack suffers from logorrhea, which is a disorder causing excessive wordiness leading to incoherency, because he's fallen and broken his crown a few times too many, right? Yeah. So he's a little bit wacko, right? And so Jill tolerates his ridiculous attention to rhetoric and wordiness, so this is where the professorial side comes in, because she feels strangely attracted to him, but notes that water is usually found at the bottom of hills. So why are they going to the top of a hill to find water and fetch a pail of water? Doesn't make sense. But she's kind of, likes the guy, she's not sure. But he's never made a move. All they do is get water, so it's like, It's not working out. You know.
I'm relieved that they're not siblings. At least I hope they're not.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Not in this version, anyway.
Okay.
Unless you want the
No.
No.
Yeah. So she's losing patience with the fact that Jack hasn't made any moves in all these years, and the story starts with a repetition of the actual and original Jack and Jill nursery rhyme. So I could start. Shall I start? Okay.
Please do.
Okay. So I call it Jack and Jill Redux, which means repeated or new version. Jack and Jill went up a hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. Up Jack got, and home did trot, as fast as he could caper, to old Dame Dob, who patched his knob with vinegar and brown paper. When Jack came in, how she did grin, to see Jack's paper plaster. Mother vexed did whip her next, for causing Jack's disaster. Okay, so that's how it starts. And I thought, well, what can I do with this? And let's remember Jack's fallen down a few too many times. Okay. So one day, Jack and Jill went up to fetch a pail of water. Jill, weary of Jack luring her to hilltops under false pretenses, launched a tirade. Jack, cut the pretense. No more pails of imaginary water. I've tolerated your ruses because I'm strangely attracted. Call it destiny. Kismet. Strolls up hills. You just don't know me. No imagination. Try something new. Maybe the Japanese fusion bistro that just opened. Miso, sashimi, ramen. You listening? You don't understand a word I'm saying, do you? See, I think that's funny because it's in Japanese. How would he? But that isn't where the story began. The story began ages ago. Jack and Jill went, well, you know the rest. They ventured different hills. Things always ended badly. Jill was a good sport, but on that particular day, Jack plundered. Usually she's speechless, less than a comma in her mouth. Today, sentence fragments erupt, tumbling to her feet. And this is where Jack's logorrhea gets the better of him. Jack replied, Yes, Jill, let's talk. Think of the rhetorical possibilities. The fricatives, fell, fast, vinegar. The affricatives, fetch, with, patched. Nasals, went, down, brown. Our favorite, the plosives, pale, broke, crown, got, trot. Jill, say more. Use your lips. Share your feelings. Jack seized Jill's shoulders, gazing at her averted eyes, while blurting ever louder. Well, fell, pale, ale, trot, hot, hobnob, paper, caper. Share your thoughts, darling Jill. Jack paused. Jill ferociously slapped Jack's face. That's it, Jack. Hills, water, pails. Nothing more. I'm sick of stereotyping. People say I'm playing ball, but I'm not playing ball. I'm knocking my kite out of a tree. People say I like my new car. I don't care about my new car. I'm happy I persuaded somebody into buying me a car. Enough with the hills already, Jack. People say I'm your friend, Jack. Well, I'm not your friend. I can't leave you because I've never been with you. What good are words if you don't understand? You've fallen endlessly, broken your crown repeatedly. Don't you realize that concussions cause dementia, pathological verbosity? I worry about you, Jack, but what about me? Did you give me the slightest consideration? No, Jack. You capered off to Dame Dob to get patched. Is that all that happened between you and Dob, Jack? You left me at the bottom of many a hill. I tumbled for you, Jack. You thought only of yourself. Try thinking of me for who I am, said Jill. Jack, you've got a one-track mind and transparent ruses. Water's found at the bottom of hills, and that's where you're going. And with that, Jill fiercely shoved Jack. Jack tumbled down and broke his crown. Jill stepped forward, glaring at Jack's descent, but tripped on a sentence fragment she dropped earlier. Once again, Jill went tumbling after.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming to talk to us and on all the best with your future projects.
Well, yeah, thanks for this wonderful opportunity to share thoughts about this online Rampike stuff. And thanks to you, Sarah, and Irene, and Kim, and Vanessa for sharing the space here. So really appreciated. Thanks so much. And I'll just, close by saying that I think that it's because of things like this that the literary community is being nurtured in the Windsor region, and it's just growing at a burgeoning rate. It's amazing. So it's wonderful to see this, and so thanks for doing this, because I know what it's like to be editing, and you guys are, among other things, editing when you're putting this stuff online. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.